look, Phyllis. Because, if this person's girl name isn't Phyllis, that's a true travesty. So you pull her aside and you say, look, Phyllis, we don't care that you used to be Paul. As far as we're concerned, Paul never even existed. Paul is dead. So when you're here at the counter, we're going to call you Phyllis. When you're on the gym floor, we're going to call you Phyllis. As far as we all go, you are Phyllis. But once you cross over into the female locker room, you are now Paul again. So what we're going to need from you, Phyllis, is for you to keep Paul out of the female locker room. This has been a good talk, Phyllis. We love having you here.
Good day. I just wanted to say I just came out of Planet Fitness, and there is a man shaving in a women's bathroom. I realize he wants to be a woman. He gets to be a woman. I love him in Christ. He's a spiritual being having a human experience. He doesn't like his gender, so he wants to be a woman. But I'm not comfortable with him shaving in my bathroom. All right, I just thought I'd say it out loud.
Looks like Planet Fitness is going to have to install a lunk alarm in the women's bathroom. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Before we get started, I just want to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to comment just to help me on the algorithm, but you don't know what to comment, just put a knife. Because I don't really know who's going to come from my neck on this one. Really, nobody should. Because I'm going to be pretty fair about the way I handle this situation, in my estimation. But somebody always gets their feelings hurt, and somebody's always going to say something that doesn't make sense and assign a bunch of feelings to me that I just don't have. So here's the deal, you guys. This lady, Patricia Silva, I thought in the nicest way possible, said that she wasn't comfortable with there being a man in the women's bathroom at Planet Fitness, which to me seemed pretty reasonable. I'll show a picture of what they look like. I mean, what's the problem? I work out at Gold's where all the women look like that. All right, let me be serious. But if you know Gold's Gym, that's one where every once in a while you get a few that are like, okay, I don't know how much testosterone is going on here, but somebody needs to slow down on some of these injections. But they will be legitimate women. And I should stop making this a joke because I know that for some people it is very serious, okay? I know that. I'm not trying to detract from that fact, but I will tell you that Planet Fitness is not designed for you to want to work out there anyway. Planet Fitness is kind of a racket where their thing really is making the membership cost low enough that you don't mind having it even though you don't go. And if you don't believe me, do some research online into Planet Fitness's business model. And just to let you know what's happened in the past couple of days, they started a hashtag on the artist formerly known as Twitter that was Boycott Planet Fitness, because a lot of women don't feel safe with an individual that looks like this.
He looked like a man
In the women's bathroom. And I gotta say that on a level, I do get you, even though it wouldn't be the same safety concern. Because I did have this happen not too long ago. And I can say that I can understand feeling a little bit of a jolt when these kinds of things happen. Because there was a person that looked like a woman and came into the men's locker room, and I did a double take because they really look like a woman. And in my head, I was like, does this person know they're in the wrong locker room? But when it came down to it, I looked a little closer and I was like, oh yeah, this is just a really pretty guy with really long hair, but definitely looked to be female, but that was not the case. So I understand, but what doesn't happen for a person like me, a genetic male, is I don't feel threatened by that situation, where I can see how a female might feel like this person does pose a threat. Because when it comes down to transitioning, and I hate to put it this way, but for newer trans women or trans women that are just starting their journey, the transition can't only be happening in your head for the rest of us to play along. And if nobody notices and you're able to use the women's locker room without raising any flags, then look at that as a sign of how far along you are in your transition. But if people aren't comfortable, then maybe use the men's locker room. And I'm not saying this to be at all insulting. I'm just saying if you're gonna cause a disruption, woman, it's probably best to go to the bathroom that most suits what you actually look like. Because usually the argument for trans women using the men's bathroom would be the fact that if you're somebody that looks to be female and you go into the men's locker room, it could turn into a scary situation for you. And I know that some of my more "you are what you are" viewers are going to get upset with me for saying this, but I do understand that safety concern when it comes to trans women. But this person would have no problem in the men's locker room. If I saw this person in the men's locker room, no matter what they were wearing, I would still be like, yeah, that's a guy.
He looked like a man.
So why would I have a problem with a guy being in the men's locker room, no matter what he's wearing? And in this day and age, and I think in most cities, LGBT and trans has become so mainstream that I think that they're going to leave you alone no matter what you're wearing. It's all just fashion choices when it comes down to it. And I'm not talking about the transition. I'm talking about if you're wearing what would normally be considered female clothing and you walk into a men's locker room, I don't think anybody's going to give you a hard time about that. I think they're just going to be like, okay, especially with gym culture, because gym culture tends to be more LGBTQ friendly because so many gay men are into fitness. And that lends itself to people just being more open-minded and not really caring about that kind of stuff. But if we're going on the what you look like is going to make it dangerous for you to be in a particular space, for this individual, that is not the case.
He looked like a man.
Then there are situations where it would be the opposite. Like Blair White did an experiment about 4 years ago. She put it on her YouTube where she went to a men's bathroom in a restaurant and she got asked to leave the restaurant.
I got kicked out of the establishment for using the men's restroom
Because a man had reported that she was in the men's bathroom and they came over to her table and asked her to close out her tab. So it's really not that hard to figure this out. Anyway, so back to Patricia. Now some people are upset because Patricia Silva ended up updating people on her social media that her Planet Fitness membership had been canceled. And that was because the picture of the person that claims to be a woman was taken in the locker room. And that's against their gym policy, which I gotta say, as a person that's gone to a lot of gyms, that's a pretty standard policy. So even though I know that she's probably a little bit of a Mrs. Kravitz and probably a little bit of a busybody, so she probably had to take the picture because her friends probably would have been like, Patricia, you're being crazy again. It's always something with you, Patricia. I don't believe you saw what you thought was a man in the Planet Fitness locker room. I'm sorry, Patricia. I just don't believe it. So she had to be like, look, I got a picture. This time I'm not being crazy, you guys. And then they saw the picture and they were like, well, damn, I guess Patricia finally has a point. She's not just complaining about the neighbor's music this time. Because you can tell by looking at her, it's always a problem with Patricia. It doesn't matter what the reason is. There's going to be a problem when it comes to Patricia. But two things can be true. Patricia can always be a problem, and there can be a situation where she doesn't feel comfortable. She also claims there was what looked like a 12-year-old girl in the locker room at the same time, and that she wasn't comfortable with the 12-year-old girl being there with what appears to be a grown man. And if you look into Planet Fitness, a year ago, they had something similar happen where there was a person that identified as female, but was a biological male, exposing himself to women in the locker room at Planet Fitness in Georgia. And again, because of their non-discrimination policy, they chose to do nothing about it, even though they had gotten reports that this person was doing that kind of stuff before it ended up happening with the 15-year-old girl. So at what point does Planet Fitness enforce the part of their policy? Because they say however people self-identify, they're going to respect it unless they have a reason to believe that that person isn't being sincere. Well, who figures out whether or not somebody's being sincere? Because I don't think the people working the counter at the Planet Fitness are qualified to figure out whether or not somebody's sincere. I don't even know what that really means. Because if you ask me, if I were to look at this particular person just being 100% honest, I would not think they were sincere when they told me that they were a woman. I would be like, no, you're making no efforts to be a woman. Even shaving in the bathroom sounds a little weird to me, but Planet Fitness is an inexpensive gym. So I know a lot of people that are between houses, let's say, that hang out at the Planet Fitness all day and all night because they also have the little lounge. Every once in a while there's pizza. Then they also have bagels sometimes. I really don't understand what they're doing over there with the food situation. But there are people that will basically live at the Planet Fitness or use it as their base while they're living out of their cars. So maybe that's why this person was there shaving. Either way, I personally think Patricia has a right to feel how she feels. And I think that women do have a right to put their collective foot down and just say, no, we're not going to allow this. And especially when we've already had situations where people have abused this. Like not too long ago, I did a video where I mentioned the person at We Spa that ended up having a bunch of pre-existing charges and was on the women's side of basically a bathhouse. And then that person ended up being exactly what everybody was afraid of. So at what point do we take women seriously and just say, okay, you're right. These people shouldn't be in your spaces? Because in their non-discrimination policy, it does say that if they end up finding out that the person isn't being sincere in the way that they identify, that they can revoke and terminate their membership. So I personally think the wording of the non-discrimination policy, instead of saying you can use whichever locker rooms or bathrooms most align with the way you identify, instead, I think, and this should be the workaround for all bathrooms if you ask me, is to just base it on biology and just say, look, you're either male or female. These are biological facts. Men and women, you're right. And don't get mad at me for saying this, but this is the way that you win this kind of argument. You've got to use these people's own language against them. That's the only way to win this. I'm trying to help you guys out. If you want to act stupid, you be stupid. But I'll tell you how you actually win this one. You make it based on biology. You agree with them. You say, okay, you're right. Gender is a social construct. You let that one go. Men and women are both social constructs. Biology, though, is facts. So you're either male or female. Which parts do you have? If your body parts say you're a male, then you go to the male locker room. And I think they should even change the signs so that people can't argue about it. That says that is the male locker room. That says that is the female locker room. And then you kind of have to go on honor system from there, because what are you going to do? Check everybody out? Because I can tell you for a fact that a lot of trans men look just like biological men. Also, a lot of trans women look just like biological women. So at that point, you're basically just left with honor system. And if there happens to be a trans woman, I can tell you that most trans women aren't going to be comfortable showing their male parts to women in a locker room. That's just not the way it usually works. And most that really do look like what it is they claim to be are not trying to show that off. And in every Planet Fitness I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of them, every single one of the locations that I've ever been to has private dressing rooms, like 3 or 4 private dressing rooms. So it's not like other gyms that you go to where people just get naked in the locker room, or at least on the men's side. I don't know about the women's side, but on the men's side, you don't usually see people naked in the Planet Fitness locker room. And I don't think no matter how many people boycott, Planet Fitness is going to change their policy, because if you don't know, bodybuilders, who you would think would be the bread and butter for Planet Fitness, have complained about that lunk alarm, which I joked about at the beginning, and the fact that you can get in trouble for working out too hard at a Planet Fitness. This is a legitimate policy that you can also search online about people getting in trouble for working out too hard at Planet Fitness. So what I'm trying to get at with that is, if they're not going to change their policy for bodybuilders, then I sincerely doubt they're going to change it for anybody else. And so when it comes to people like this person, I think in order to have your non-discrimination policy but still be able to enforce the fact that the locker rooms are going to be based on biological sex and not gender, is to just politely pull them aside and say, look, Phyllis. Because, you know, if this person's girl name isn't Phyllis, that's a true travesty. So you pull her aside and you say, look, Phyllis, we don't care that you used to be Paul. As far as we're concerned, Paul never even existed. Paul is dead. So when you're here at the counter, we're going to call you Phyllis. When you're on the gym floor, we're going to call you Phyllis. As far as we all go, you are Phyllis. But once you cross over into the female locker room, you are now Paul again. So what we're going to need from you, Phyllis, is for you to keep Paul out of the female locker room. This has been a good talk, Phyllis. We love having you here. And leave it at that. I mean, what else are we looking for in the world right now? I don't know why people can't just figure these things out, but if we're going to have to come up with solutions, solutions, and we're going to have to come up with solutions. And just like back when the gays were trying to fight over marriage, which I still don't think they should have been fighting to have, but I'll talk about that another day. Don't jump on me because you don't even know how I actually feel about it. Maybe I'll make a video about it. Who knows? One day I'll talk about it though. But I was trying to tell the gays, stop trying to hold on to the word marriage. It's not that important, and it's really the point and not the actual verbiage. And that's the same thing I'm going to tell straight people right now, or the conservative, because they're painting it as conservatives being outraged, but I don't think it's just conservatives. I think anybody that considers women's safety to be an actual priority is concerned about this. Because while I joke, I do think it is a serious thing, and I don't think that when it comes to those particular spaces that it should be controversial at all for women to say, hey, these are spaces that we want to just have for us. So what I'm saying is, this is where society in general needs to just let go of the man-woman thing, at least just for this instance. And like I said earlier, just say, you're right. Men and women are social constructs. Male and female are not though. So males in the male locker room, females in the female locker room. And that's the policy for everybody. If you don't like that, then this is not the gym for you. And that goes for Phyllis, Patricia Silva, and anybody else that wants to go to a Planet Fitness. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. This has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.